You're listening to the Voiceover Casting Corner, a podcast and question and answer session recorded live every month. VCC is brought to you by the Voicecaster. The Voicecaster casts thousands of voices every year across all genres, and we're excited to give you an inside look at the casting process direct from our casting team.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Voiceover Casting Corner. We are super excited to bring you a special episode today where we are going to chat with Ben Schneider, who is casting and booth director here at Voicecaster. But before that, and currently, he is the owner and founder of Develop It Ben, which is his company where he does websites and all things social media and web content. So he's going to talk about actors' sites. I think he's going to give some examples, things like that. And yeah, we're going to talk about all the things that you guys as actors should or should not have on your website and online presence. So yeah, let's chat with Ben and see what we can learn about websites. He is my go-to guy for all things websites. He designed the Voicecaster, so voicecaster.com. And yeah, he's amazing to work with on all of that. So he maintains all of that for us. So, all right.
All right. Yeah. So websites, we see them on a daily basis. And basically, I just want to kind of reiterate some things that you may want to know as you either have a website or if you're looking to get a website, just certain things that you may or may not know about that will help you in terms of getting the audience to respond to what they're seeing online. First off, let's start off with kind of the what you need and what you don't need, because that's the biggest crux of what a website, if it's going to be successful or if it's going to fail. And since the internet started, there have been a series of very successful websites and not so great websites. And the biggest thing you want is for your audience to have an easy time navigating, seeing what's there, what information you're trying to get through without becoming frustrated and then deciding, well, I'm done with this, I'm going to go somewhere else. And that's the worst thing you want with your website. So basically, things you really need to have on a website that audience will search for right away. Your name. A lot of times people don't have their name in a good spot for somebody to find. A lot of times it can be buried all the way down on the footer. Well, people, a good percentage will not make it halfway down the web page. So if your name is somewhere hidden, they're not going to know who you are. They're just, if you have your title of what the brand is, they might be like, oh, well, it's this brand, but I don't know who I'm supposed to be reaching out to, especially if they don't make it to a contact section to get your email. That leads me into the next thing, contact information. That's kind of imperative, especially if you're trying to sell yourself and your talent to casting directors who might happen upon your site, or if you send them your site, having your email is probably the best thing to have on there, at least towards the top or someplace. Sometimes you can put your phone number. Some people do put the phone number there if you want somebody to contact you. Have your email front and center. Another good thing to have for the site is your bio. Who are you? What do you want to convey to the audience that's looking at your page? Do you want to talk about where you came from? Do you want to talk about hobbies you have, showcasing who you are? A headshot is also good, or some form of picture of yourself. It doesn't have to be a professionally done headshot. It can be you standing by a tree. It could be with dogs. It could be any type of, again, showing your personality, because that's what the main goal of the site is going to be, is your personality needs to shine. Another good thing to have that I would recommend is having your current and past work someplace. Usually it could be in the form of your demo reel, for example, having that front and center and easy to get to right away. Because if a casting director is looking for you, they're going to look for that first. And if it's right there, front and center, someplace on the front top of the page, then, that's going to be what helps you. Some things on the website. Now, this can be anywhere on the home page, anywhere if you have multiple pages. Some nice things to have, but not necessary. Agent information, if you have an agent. Having your home studio, if you have one, having that information, because they may want to know, do you have source connects from your home studio, or do you have to come into a studio? That might be helpful knowledge for somebody. Okay to have, but not necessary in terms of a successful website, especially if you're showing your talent. You don't really need to have a multiple page website. A lot of times, if you have numerous pages, it can be very tricky to locate certain information. A good rule of thumb is maybe between 1 to 4 pages at most. Just so in case you want to have one for your reel or your videos that you may have, something for your resume, something about your about page or your contact page. Those are usual suspects you find on a website. But once you start getting into even more websites, not only do you have to continuously maintain them and keep them updated, but it can also become, you jump into the weeds and you're like, well, where do I go next? Now I'm on this page. Now how do I get back to what? And then that's when another frustrations can come into play, and people will just bail on the website and be like, well, I've got what I need, I'm going. But you can have more than one page. But if you're showing your demo reel or your videos, a nice one pager is always good, because you can just scroll down, find all the information all the way to the bottom, and it's easy to find things and easy to locate the information that is necessary that you want to make sure you give to the audience. Quotes, either if you have a favorite quote that you like, sometimes it can lend to the personality of who you are. If there is a inspirational quote that you like, sometimes having that either at the top or midway through, next to a picture, next to some information, just kind of also adds to your personality. Again, it isn't unnecessary, but it's nice to kind of see that sometimes, especially if it's something that somebody relates to, for example, or it means something to them that will connect and they'll remember when they speak to you. Reviews, you can have reviews if you'd like. If you received rave reviews for something and you want to showcase that, you can do that. A resume page. Now, sometimes it can be good, but for the most part, you don't really need to have a page specifically geared that shows all that you've completed. It's nice to show some highlights on the main page. If you want to have a resume page that showcases everything you've done from beginning to end, that's fine. It's just not something that a lot of people will veer towards. If you have social media, that's a good spot to put. If you have an Instagram feed or a Facebook page you want to showcase. We'll get more into the social media later on, but that's something that, you don't need to have it, but if you want, fine. No one's going to slap your hand and say, no, you can't have that on that web page. Another popular page that's on a lot of websites are blogs. So if you do a daily blog and you want to showcase that, just make sure that it pertains to what you're showcasing, and not like this is my daily, this happened to me today, but make sure it's geared specifically towards what you're using the web page for, because people aren't going to really pay attention to if it's not related to your website. Again, that's not a necessity, because with that as well, you have to maintain it, because it's nothing worse than going to a blog site and seeing something from like 2019 was the last updated post. In theory, it's good people always want to do it, but it's that if you don't have somebody to maintain it, or if you're not maintaining it on at least a weekly basis, or if not 2 weeks at the least, then I would forgo that bit. Now, some pieces of advice to avoid on a website. There isn't a lot that's like, oh, no, don't do that. But there are some characteristics of a website that you want to avoid at all costs, just to make it easier for the audience, because they're the ones that are looking at the entire page. Avoid off-putting colors, especially if they are like neons or bright pastel colors that are going to make your eyes, if it makes your eyes squint, it's going to make everybody else's eyes squint. Plus, you also have to think in terms of accessibility, because there are people who may not be able to see very well, and they have e-readers that'll read what's on the page, or they might be able to see a little bit, but if the colors are so vibrant that it melds all the words and text in there, you can't read it, or the e-reader won't be able to pick it up. That goes with the same colors with fonts. You want to make sure that you have a nice combination of a background color that's usually mute, neutral, modern, in terms of trying to keep everything accessible, because in this day and age, especially where there's all these rules and laws put into place you have to have certain standards, especially with the accessibility element of it. You want your fonts to be able to pop right out and not blend in. You may think they're the prettiest colors on the world, but if other people are going to be looking at the site, they may not see what you're trying to convey, and they'll get fed up again and go someplace else because they're just going to be like, oh, I can't handle this. I can't understand, I can't read, I can't follow. The same goes with calligraphy styled fonts. Try to keep things to more what are sans serif and serif fonts that are easy to read, not stuff that's cursive, or it can be cursive as long as you can read what it is. But a lot of times these very pretty fonts, you start to type in something and it looks like a mess, because especially if you're on the phone or even on the desktop when you're further away and you're trying to make out what it says, try to keep those to a bare minimum of maybe the name of the site. As long as it's easy to read, bold, and you can make it out, then fine. There are a handful that are like that, but you don't want that to be on your main site on all the important information. You want it to be legible and easy to scan and not have to be searched for like, oh, what is this? What I can't quite make it out. So just to bear that in mind. Another big thing is having too much information. And I've mentioned this previously about the fact if you have so much information on your page, it can get overwhelming for the audience, and if they can't find something, they get confused, they just get frustrated, and they'll just depart and they'll find something else to do rather than staying on your site, which is what you want to do, is to keep the audience there as long as possible. So that way they will remember what you're trying to provide to them. Yeah, so those are, a gist of things to have, what to avoid, nice to have. I don't know if anyone has questions on that or...
Kelly and I were talking a little earlier about some pet peeves we have going to actors' websites. One of them was when stuff just autoplays. So when you go to the website, you don't want to be bombarded with a bunch of noise.
Especially if you can't control the volume yourself.
Yeah.
I went to a site once and they had like 6 or 7 different demos and they all started playing at the same time and there was no way to pause any of them. So it's like...
And you can't find it quickly. It just keeps playing and playing until you hit the X to get out of it, because you've now become so jarred and frustrated by that experience. It's like when you're on Netflix and they autoplay everything and you're trying to focus on something else, and it just really just makes things a little difficult.
And then you'd mentioned having contact information. That one's huge. Every so often I'll go to an actor's website because I don't have contact information for them, and then they don't have it there, and it's like, okay. Or they'll have a form, contact me here and fill this out. And I'm like, no, I just want to have a number or an a So making that stuff visible. I don't want to have to hunt you down.
Yeah. And not just having your agent, have a direct contact. I mean, you can get, if you have a Gmail account, you can get a free Google Voice number that connects to your phone. So you can give out your Google Voice number and not your own, personal phone number. Exactly. So it's like, do something like that. And an email so that we can actually reach you. I have had someone lose a job because I reached out to their agent. Their agent never got back to us, and we were ready to book. Our client found them through their website, just didn't know how to reach out to them. They never heard back from the agent. We never heard back from the agent, and I could never find contact information for them. So they lost the job.
Huge.
Yeah, and Kevin brings up a good point with the forms. That's another, it's okay to have a form, especially if
I just feel like I don't know where it goes. I'm like, is this person actually going to read this?
That's the other thing too, is because it's another thing it goes to a database that the person who has it has to maintain that information, unless the email is going directly to their email. But a lot of times what you're putting in is name, address, phone numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're going to have a form, fine. But I always suggest put your information as well, contact-wise, up on the top, and then have the form of somebody, especially if it's a form that you want. If somebody wants to, if you are at that point where someone wants to book you and you have information what do you want me for? What do you, But most of the time it's just sort of there for just looks. Having a form is people just want your email or your phone number to just send some message to. And the worst part about the form is that with that database, you can fall into some tricky territory, because now you have to, if you're now you're maintaining other people's emails into your database, and there's a whole list of rules and regulations regarding that. I'm sure you're all familiar with the cookies. I need these, yes or no or whatever. That's all related to a lot of these laws and regulations regarding the fact of protecting your information. And if you are using something like WordPress and it goes into some sort of unsecure location, if you get hacked, those emails now are available to whoever has hacked you. And I've seen it happen before with one of my clients, where they weren't paying attention and didn't have the right security. Then all of a sudden someone hacked in and it shut down his whole website. And so then you have to go through all this with Google, and it turns into
the whole thing,
a rolling a nightmare that took a couple of months before the site was back up and running again. And that was just a travel blog website.
That's too long.
Another big one is make sure your demos are downloadable. So if you've got your demos on your website, make a way for people to download them. People like us, we like to keep them on file so we can refer back to them. Remember what you sound like, or sometimes we have clients that just want demos for casting, so we need to be able to have your demo accessible. And if I don't have a way to download it, we're not going to be able to keep you for submission projects, because we don't have a demo on you. We don't know what you're
so, Yep.
That's always a good thing too.
It's super important. And
a lot of widgets and things for your website will have a player that will also have a way to download. So you don't have to go to Sound. I forget what the places where SoundCloud, where you a repository to put your information there. You can just have it in your own library and able to download it there, not have to do any fancy coding or anything to make it work.
I do see a couple of questions that are website related. Should we get into those before we move into social media? All right. So the first one, are there any specific sites, places, opportunities where VO Talent can most effectively share and showcase websites for maximum visibility? It's a great question.
Like a voice bank.
Yeah. I mean, I know of a couple of, there's several voiceover groups on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and I know a couple of them do like Website Wednesday or, things like that where you can share. A lot of that's probably going to be with other actors. So I think it's more of getting your website out there to other people. And, Ben can speak to this, but making sure the SEO, and when somebody's, trying to search for certain friendly voice actor, hopefully it's not that general, but you have things on there that make your website pop up. I think the ultimate goal is to be like the first page of Google, right? So I think that's more of an SEO thing. Then you correct me if I'm wrong.
But the way you can kind of get around some of that, it's not anything. You can put stuff on the back end if you have somebody who can finagle to get in the back to put in some keywords. But the biggest thing is on your website to have keywords that if Google's system is searching through all these, then yours is going to pop up. Like, for example, if you typed in develop it, Ben, it's going to appear because develop it, but you have to type that in. But there might be another word that is associated on my website that might pull from that repository and then put you on the front page. Now, one thing to bear in mind with Google is you'll notice that there's a lot of sponsors on the first page, and they're people who pay billions of dollars to get their names up there. So you're already at a disadvantage, but the biggest thing is to just get keywords that are unique and that will appear. It's like the hashtags when you see that on social media. If you type in Voicecaster, our social pages will start appearing at some point because the hashtag Voicecaster is there. So that's basically the same thing with your main pages, of having the correct words that are going to pull. And you can find information online of like what are popular phrases, words that you can put on there. And then you just have to have it one place or a few places that when it goes through the filters, it will pull your information. And the more people who come to your site, also increases your chance of moving towards the top because you become a quote popular page. And so that helps too. So if you're sending your website out to people, a good place to put your website information is on your signature, on your email signature, because you're always sending emails. And if you have it right there front and center, people will see that, and then people will click and go to it. I do it all the time. If I see somebody's, if it's in their if their website is listed in their file, then I'll email them and I'll go to it and check it out, just because I'll be curious to see like what's going on. So in terms of like an actual place to go and deposit your information, I don't think anything exists to my knowledge, but just because it is that's a very specific thing to do that unless you go to like Reddit or something, they might have places to like just plop in information, but then you run the risk of it getting filtered down to the bottom and people won't see it as easily. So it's just getting it to people, sending it to people, having it readily seen by anybody who might see it come across you. So
yeah, and having it there and always available, is one of the biggest things. All right. And then Venus, thanks for doing this. If you have multiple agents, how many should you list on your site? So obviously having your direct contact information, and then at least your primary agent. You could have a couple of different agents, because it's like for us, we're based in Los Angeles. So I have close relationships with a ton of LA agents. So if I'm going to reach out to someone and book you, just directly like that, I'm probably going to be like, okay, well, who's the LA agent? Because that's where I am, even though that may not be where you're based. So you can have either just your primary agent that you want, these extra bookings, hopefully, that are just rolling in. You want those to go through them, or you can list, some of the major ones. I've seen some websites where people have 7 agents listed, and that's fine. At that point, I will just pick either the LA one or the one of those 7 that I have a good relationship with. So yeah, there's no hard and fast rule on that. That's, but making sure that you also have your direct contact information.
One thing with the numerous listings, just make sure they're all easy to read and not
cluttered up.
Yeah, and give enough space between each one so you're not getting confused. And as Kelly mentioned, a good rule of thumb is if you've got somebody on the West and East Coast, have them both there and say where they are located as well, rather than just their name. That way, as Kelly mentioned, she'll look for the one who's closer and then reach out to them directly that way.
Yeah. And we don't want to scroll. Like, that's one of the biggest things is like, I don't want to scroll through 12 agents, so that's something to keep in mind as far as, formatting and stuff goes as well. I just want to share this lovely comment here. Susie Cassie, Ben saved me tons of headaches with my website, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah, it can be.
He's a miracle worker.
It can be a stressful situation, that's for sure. When you're trying to do it on your own, it can be done. There are easy, quote easy drag and drop websites like Wix and Squarespace that offer you a chance to try it yourself. But once you get to a point where it's like, well, it's not looking like my template is supposed to look like, and I'm doing this, and this, that's where it can get a little confusing. And then you've got to start either find somebody to help put it back together, or just go on YouTube has tons of information, as well as Google. Just they usually will get you somewhere if you type in my site crashed and this happened, and then there'll be like a bunch of pages of people having the same problem, because everybody has a problem, no matter what. Even I, who can code things on the back end, have to go and research something because I may not know why this isn't working, but somebody else may know and they'll have the answer. And that usually will happen with a system like WordPress, where you may have the whole world is your oyster with WordPress, but unless you know how it works underneath the cover, then it's going to just really make you pull your hair out. When I first started years ago and I was looking into WordPress, I was pulling my hair out because I was like, how do you understand this thing? And now with the invention of sites like Squarespace and Wix, where you can drag and drop pretty much and make it look like how you want your site to be, one issue you can run into is breakage, where you may look fine, but when you press publish, you go to the browser or onto your phone, and it like a picture is up in the corner, and you're like, well, why did it go all the way up there? And that's when, and usually the support system that Squarespace and Wix and even WordPress has, contacting them, they'll usually know what happened or how to fix the problem, especially if the website goes down because of a server issue. These are all things you have to consider too when you're getting your website up there.
This made me think of something else, Ben. I noticed sometimes websites are different when you look at them on a computer versus your phone. Is that something you need to think about when you're making a website?
Definitely, especially now, as I notice that people are still primarily on a desktop, but the mobile users are starting to inch towards becoming the majority in terms of the percentages. And so you want to start off trying to make the site mobile first, where it will fit on an Android or an Apple phone and look like it should be, right size images, that everything is kind of collapsing on top of each other or easy to swipe. That's when you've got to start really thinking hard and fast about what you want to have on your right at the beginning of the website. And I noticed with Wix, for example, I just created one last week where you have the opportunity to drag and drop for desktop and then switch over to the mobile, and you can change it to make it work that way. Then you don't have to worry about coding it yourself to make it do A, B, and C, to have the image shrink down to what you want it to, or have all the information come to the center rather than like, oh no, it's over here now, and all I see is it Ben. Where's develop? I can't see develop anywhere. So it is something to think about, because most people will be on their phone scrolling quickly through to find information. So just bear that in mind.
Good. And I have to share another nice comment here. Danielle said, Ben is the best. I'm so happy with my website. He's a joy to work with and has great ideas. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, it helps to have somebody to help, it's yeah. And like the back end coding and stuff, it's like, I've done websites where it's just plug and play. I've also, had website designed, and then I would just like go in and change information. And sometimes that was even just a nightmare, because like you change like 3 words on something and it's like, I don't know, the formatting changed and the spacing changes. And I'm like, what's going on? So yeah, having somebody who knows that, it's been amazing.
The thing with, if you're looking for software to use like WordPress, Squarespace, and Wix. With Squarespace and Wix, you're kind of at the mercy of what they provide to you, and you can't get into the back end and say you like the template, but you want the colors to be this, or you want the font to be a different font. You may not have that luxury of being able to do that. However, with WordPress, as I said, the world is your oyster, because you can go in and change things. However, if you start to do that without knowing how to modify the code, you can break the entire site by just forgetting a ampersand or forgetting a semicolon, which are necessary in the backend code. So if that's missing, and that is it's reading everything, and all of a sudden crash. But you have a chance to go in and say, I want flying cards to fly in for me, and I can only do that with this code, so I need to put that in to make it work. Whereas you won't be able to do that unless it's offered with Squarespace and Wix. So there's pros and cons for each software. It depends on what you feel more comfortable with and what the person who you may hire to build a site is familiar with, because they may not know much about Wix, or they may not know much about Squarespace or WordPress. But the nice thing is, as I've done in the past for myself, I just research what I'm looking for, and usually there's a code or a way to fix something quickly.
I mean, codes are like a different language. It's like you're fluent in another language. Like, it makes no sense to me. I look at that stuff and I'm like, just look away. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, the Voicecaster has a whole bunch of codes that are not part of the template.
When we were redoing that a few years ago, there were so many just little things. I'd be like, this is so nitpicky, and I'd tell Ben what I wanted and he'd make it happen. I was like, I could have never done that with my just, changing words here and there and, all of that. So All right. Should we talk a little bit about social media? And then if you guys have any questions, feel free to, drop them in the comments there, and we'll make sure we get to questions as well. But we'll chat a little bit about social media, because I know social media can be a really dreaded thing for people. And real quick, before Ben gets into social media, I just want to mention that, so often people are like, how important is it for me to be on social media? I don't have any social media accounts, things like that. And it's like,
kind of need to have it.
it's like, if you don't have something, at least have Instagram. But then the thing is if you have something, you do need to maintain it. It's like you just like Ben about the blog. It's like
social media pages, because they want to see how many followers certain actors have.
I've made spreadsheets for clients with how many, Facebook followers they have, how many Instagram followers they have, like all these things. So it's, it is a thing that's definitely out there, but they know you're going to share the content. It's like, if you voice a commercial, they know you're going to share that when it's online. And if you're in a video game, they know you're going to share that when it comes out, so it's free marketing for them. It's free advertising. They get all of your followers on board. So, so it is something that you want to have, and it can be a good presence, and it can be such a great way to interact with casting directors and agents and managers that you're scoping out and things like that. And of course, other actors. Yeah. But we have our Voicecaster Instagram page, and then I have my own Instagram page, and I've met so many people just, who reached out to me through there, or commented on things that I then follow them back, and I'm getting to know people just through social media. So it's like, it's one of those things where unfortunately it's becoming more prominent, and it is something that you're gonna have to have.
Yeah. And to kind of piggyback off of that, if you're starting one, or if you want something that's going to be geared towards your voice casting, voice acting, make sure it's curated for that, and not having a lot of personal information and pictures and things that are like, you may not want to have that shared to your audience, especially if you're trying to build an audience that is going to be wanting to know about your voice acting and voice career. They don't want to really know that you went to the store and bought an apple, that's, unless it pertains to, I'm buying this apple for my audition, so I don't
green apple to get rid of mouth wings.
But then it's catered right towards your Instagram or your feed. And then, as Kelly was mentioning, with people start noticing through other places, oh, you posted with this person, you reposted this, and then all of a sudden your audience starts to build. If you do something that goes viral one day, and who knows what that could be, then all of a sudden, boom, you get hit with lots and lots of subscribers. But again, you have to maintain it. It's like the blog situation. You can't just put like 3 things and that's your social media feed from 2024, and now it's 2035, and you haven't done anything since then. I mean that's it
could be like a part-time job, just doing that.
But it is a job.
Yeah. It's a lot.
I maintain the Voicecaster social media feeds, and if you start to lax in it in some way or another, people when you start to really start posting once, twice a week, people start expecting it in your audience, and then if you stop for some reason or another, then they'll either just never come back to look. You still might have them, but then at some point they'll unsubscribe, and then your numbers start to go down, and then that starts playing havoc with the analytics and how you're being seen.
I was gonna say, algorithms change. Then it's like, then your stuff isn't showing up as often in as many people's feeds. So it's like,
and that's kind of what we do here. You set yourself a schedule. On Monday we do this, Tuesday is this, so do that for yourself too when you're posting stuff or thinking about what you want to brag about.
Right.
And if you have to, set up a schedule, like that's one of the things, is like, try to set up a schedule, like you post every Monday and it's this, or, there's also things that you can use to help you schedule posts in advance as well, like Hootsuite, and I know there's other ones, and some of them are subscriptions. So, decide if that's something that you want to pay for. Everything's a subscription nowadays.
Right.
Oh man. But yes, but you know, just setting up a schedule for yourself so that you try to stick to it for that consistency.
And don't beat yourself up if you miss one day of the schedule, because we've missed things. I've missed things because of getting busy. But it's just because you miss one day, that's not going to make everybody say, "Oh, I'm unsubscribing." It's if it's like 3, 4, 5 weeks go by and nothing's been happening since that last post. That's when people start to take notice or forget, and then it'll take you a while to come back and get your self back up on the main feed that people will see you again. But it's quite, you know, an undertaking to have a successful social media feed, especially if you want people to notice you. Just look at all the influencers we have out there.
Right.
It's a very difficult and tricky situation sometimes. So just gotta keep going with it and push it forward, and you'll reap the benefits once something happens. Even if you get 100 followers, 100 people is a lot. Even at the beginning, and then 100 people start to turn into 1,000, and then it continues because some people will share, and it's just every once in a while reminding people, hey, I'm out here.
Yep. Take that picture of you in the booth every time you book a job. You know, it's
tag wherever.
And tag whoever you're at too.
You add lots of hashtags.
Yep.
But make sure they're pertinent to what you're posting.
Yeah. And you know, like a personal post once in a while is fine, but be careful of anything that is controversial at all. We were casting something a few years ago, and it was basically the spokesperson for this project. They had narrowed it down to their top 4 people, and they asked me to do a social media check. So I went through every public anything I could find on all 4 of them, and just, you know, like I reached out to one guy, and he had a picture on Instagram with his middle finger up. And I was like, let's take that down, because that will be a mark against you. And he took it down. He actually was the one they ended up going with for the job. And he's still doing that job to this day. But, you know, that's something that they'll do. They'll look at that. And it's like, a middle finger, if you're, you know, cussing all the time or what, you know, it's like, and of course you could offend anybody with anything. So, you know, I say that, but, you know, take it with a grain of salt, because it's different for everybody. And some people feel very strongly about certain things and they want to share it. You know, that's fine. Know that
you're not sure about it. I wonder if this could be construed in a bad light. Maybe don't post that stuff.
Exactly. But I don't mind seeing some things that are personal here and there. You know, it's like being casting director, I don't necessarily want my Instagram feed to be 100% people in their booths. Get creative. I love seeing those things. And I love when people, you know, book jobs with us and tag us and, you know, things like that.
Great.
We repost and share all that kind of stuff. So
one thing regarding, I'll just jump into that I learned this past week at one of the webinars I attended. If you want people to start like engaging with you, get an animal involved in your picture. You have a dog or a cat at home, or even if it's a fish, you know, people love animal pictures. And my Instagram feed is full of cat pictures and things and people, just because of I love cats. And so if you put yourself, I went for a walk with my pet, and, you know, just if that's like littered in there a few times, you know, people will notice that and they'll engage with it. And then the engagements start adding into more clicks, more audience, more being seen on the main feed. Because that's always what you try to go for, is the engagement ratings.
Yeah, that kind of leads in. I see Venus has a question there about any suggestions on how to get more followers across your socials. So that could be a good one.
Yeah, that and posting. Just keep the feed going. Share it. If you have multiple, if you have Facebook, TikTok, well, TikTok's it's a kind of own animal, but like Twitter or X, Facebook and Instagram, if they're all can be connected somehow. If you create something and you want to share it on all your feeds, because you may have audiences who are on your Facebook feed but not on your Instagram feed, and you don't want to assume that everybody is following you from all the different locations. So if you have them set up so you can post on all platforms at the same time, that gets it out to at multiple people as well.
Yeah. And make sure you're networking as much as possible. Like make sure that's something that you share. Like when I've even seen people, and I'll admit I've actually gone to it because of it. I've seen people have their website as well as like their social media handle in their name on Zoom. So when you're in a Zoom meeting right there, people see that they can, find you, and that's another way to just connect with people that you're in the room with. I did a showcase this weekend and there were a couple that had things like that. And I was like, that's smart. That's a smart thing to do because it's right there. It's another way that you can just kind of get it out there. I have a couple of other questions here. Let's see. I'm a situational extrovert, so I find social media exhausting. Yep. I think most people do. I like the idea of a schedule. Any other tips for getting out of the comfort zone for us? Yeah. So having a schedule, like one of our things is Tongue Twister Tuesday. So it's like if you have to, I see a lot of people who post Wednesday wisdom, things like that. So it's like if you want to pick something like that, that also just kind of narrows the focus. So you're not so much like, I have to post something. What am I going to post? It just gives you a little bit more of a structure. And I find that for me, it also is just like none of us here have time to sit there and think about social media all day, but we still have to maintain it. So having some structure definitely helps so it doesn't get as overwhelming and exhausting. Any other ideas, Ben, Catherine?
Having an accountability friend. If you've got a fellow actor out there, you guys can tag team that together. I mean, you guys, keep each other accountable.
Yeah, and Kelly brought up a good point about it. It can lead to a lot of burnout with social media. You just want to make sure you don't have to post nonstop is the thing. It's like having multiple pages on a website. Multiple posts a day or a week, people will start getting turned off by it and be annoyed. And rather than that's the opposite of what you want to have happen. So it's like, give yourself like, okay, I'm going to post once or twice a week. Even if you post once a week, make it count. Make whatever you're sharing count. And that'll increase the engagements if people are relating to it. And then people will share it as well, or tag you or tag somebody else and say, hey, you might like this. This person did this, so you might like this. And that just branches it out even further.
Yeah. And actually going back to Venus's question, that another way to also just get yourself out there and get more followers is commenting on things. The people that you follow, comment, interact, because then that helps you both. And, it bumps things up in the algorithm. I did learn in an Instagram boot camp thing that I did where they talked about when you comment, make sure it's a minimum of 4 words, because then it counts as a comment to bump the post up. So that helps you as the commenter and the person whose post you're commenting on. But that is another way where people will see you commenting and be like, oh, why am I not following her yet? I can't tell you how many times I've done that. I on Instagram, I follow a lot of actors and agents and managers and everybody else. But I've done that where I saw that like, oh, somebody commented on this post and I'm like, why am I not following that person? So that's another way to kind of get yourself out there. And if there's a reason, we already kind of mentioned this, but if there's a reason to post or to tag somebody else in your post, tag people, because they're probably going to share it. And then again, more people are going to see that. They're going to see you. They're going to click on you. They're going to go to your pages, so it kind of snowballs like that.
Yeah, that goes back to our Tongue Twister Tuesday. We always are asking people to try it out and tag us because that gets us into their feed and their audience. And if they have a large following, they may come back to our social feed and then start following us. So that's the engagement. You always get people engaged, because if they're not engaged, then they're just not going to do anything and not going to follow. And just always bear that in mind when you're making a post.
Good. All right, let's see. We got a few more questions here. So which is more effective within the Instagram algorithm, hashtags or description boxes?
I'm not sure. I know. I was trying to see if I could find some information. I'm not sure what a description box is. At least I've never used one before. I wonder if it's
Yeah.
something. They're always changing. Social media is
They're
always
always
changing.
changing things. I know hashtags are still pretty effective.
Very effective.
What I've learned is hashtags are very effective on Instagram, not as much on Facebook. Still putting them there, but I learned a thing that was like, if you have tons of hashtags, it's like don't worry about it as much on Facebook as Instagram. So, all right. And Brandon said, do you find it wise to add a QR code to your posts to a link tree or something similar?
I think Linktree is great.
Mm-hmm.
Having multiple information for people to find, because most places that I follow, people I follow, they have like 4 or 5 main links. Ours has all of our social feeds and our websites and other information that's pertinent to our business there. Since Instagram doesn't really give you the ability to link a lot of things like Facebook does, the link tree with QR codes or other links is very helpful, especially if you're trying to look for something that someone might be trying to find.
Do you have any final thoughts, Ben, as far as websites, social media? I know we could talk all day about this, but we're coming to a close.
Just make sure that when you're thinking of getting yourself out there on the website, on your own website, that just remember your personality. Think about the traits you want to have people see, because your website's going to be like your business card. And you want people to go and see it and then leave thinking, oh, I remember that person's site because of, oh, they had that picture, or they even said this, or, you just want to make sure that you're shining through that, because you may be shining on your demo reel, but if it's just sitting there with nothing else to kind of perk it up, then they may or may not click on it or download it. So just think about that when you're going into it, and remember that whether you do it yourself or you hire somebody, that you can do a whole lot of things with the website, but sometimes you may or may not want to do it or need to do something on a site or have something on a site. I always say, and I've mentioned this to many of my clients, less is more. Have less, but make it important and pertinent, and you'll have a successful website.
So Ben, if people want to hire you, where do they find you?
Hey, I was just writing that in there. Yep. You say it out loud. I'm going to put it in the comments as well.
You can visit my website, developitben.com. That has all of my current and past work. And it kind of tells a little bit about myself, a little more in detail about my journey. And that page was built from scratch, which is no WordPress, it's just building from code and then putting it onto the site. So it can show you another way of how you can get things done. That's a little more trickier than having an actual system.
And obviously you can look at voicecaster.com because Ben did all of that. And then he's got other samples of websites that he's done on his website as well. So definitely check it out. I saw Susie also had mentioned, Danielle, I just looked at your website. I love it. I love how Ben's work is so varied, so the actor's unique personality shines through. So yeah, if you're looking at website people, feel free to reach out to Ben. He can help you with whatever. But if you guys have any questions on any of this, feel free to reach out and let us know. And we'll be back in a couple weeks with our next episode. Yeah. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Catch our next VoiceOver Casting Corner episode live on Facebook and YouTube. Check our socials or follow us for the latest info. Thanks for listening.